The first Sunday in May always smelled like roasted rosemary chicken in my kitchen. I'd been making the same Mother's Day dinner for decades, the way my mother taught me everything from scratch. The table set with the good china, the air filled with the sound of my family's voices. But this year, something felt different the moment I walked into the dining room. Sabrina was already there, arranging plates and folding napkins into sharp little triangles. In the 12 years she'd been married to my son, Colton, she had never once set the table. Usually, she hovered in the living room, offering suggestions about presentation while scrolling through her phone. Today, she wore a cream sweater that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. Her blonde hair pulled back in a bun so tight it looked painful. Her smile met me halfway, polite but cold. Like a hostess greeting a stranger at the door. "I'll handle this," she said lightly. "You just focus on the kitchen." It was my day, technically. But I had learned long ago that keeping the peace often meant swallowing the small insults. I turned back to the kitchen, basting the chicken, tasting the gravy, breathing in the scents that had carried me through years of loss and hard work. By the time we sat down, the table gleamed. The candles were lit, and Sabrina was in full performance mode. She laughed too loudly at Colton's small jokes, complimented her own place settings, and touched the sleeve of her father's blazer in a way that looked rehearsed. Colton seemed elsewhere, answering her questions automatically, glancing at his watch. I stayed mostly quiet, refilling glasses, passing dishes, pretending not to notice how little this evening felt like mine. Halfway through dessert, Sabrina cleared her throat and reached under her chair. She pulled out a cream envelope that matched her sweater and held it up with a flourish. "Family trip announcement," she said. The table buzzed with excitement as she explained they were leaving for 10 days in Hawaii tomorrow morning. Then she pulled out a smaller card and slid it across to me. The script was elegant. The words, "anything but house-sitting duties. Deep clean all rooms. Organize closets. Thank you for your service." I looked at Colton. He looked at his plate. My cheeks burned, but I smiled and placed the card beside my wine glass, letting the conversation move on without me. I already knew that tomorrow the house would be empty. This house has been mine since 1981. My husband, Henri, and I signed the papers in a lawyer's office on a rainy afternoon, holding hands like two kids buying their first dream. We thought we had a lifetime to fill it with memories. 3 years later, a delivery truck's brakes failed on a wet road, and I was left standing at the same kitchen window, staring at an empty driveway. I kept the house because it was all Colton and I had left of him, paid off the mortgage with the life insurance, refusing to sell no matter how many people told me it was too big for just the two of us. Every wall held a memory. Colton's first steps in the hallway, his school science projects spread across the dining table, the smell of Henry's cologne lingering in the bedroom. I worked 2 jobs clerking at the hardware store in the mornings, waiting tables at the Marina Cafe in the evenings so the taxes got paid and the lights stayed on. When Colton brought Sabrina home for the first time, I thought she was a blessing. She had a warm laugh and a way of making him stand taller. In the beginning, she asked about my recipes, complimented the garden, even offered to help decorate the Christmas tree. But over the years, the warmth cooled. Comments began slipping in about my old-fashioned curtains, how I should let them handle the holidays, how Colton needed more space to be a husband. The shift was slow enough that I didn't notice how many rooms no longer felt like mine. Family photos disappeared from the hallway, replaced with abstract art. The kitchen table became too casual for guests. My place in my own home became an arm's length away from the center. I think the last Mother's Day I truly felt celebrated was the year before they married, when Colton made pancakes and brought me flowers from the yard. I still have the photo me at the kitchen table. Sunlight in my hair, his hand on my shoulder. Tomorrow, they'd be gone, and for the first time in years, the house would be mine again, even if only for a while. They left before sunrise. The rumble of rolling suitcases over the porch steps, breaking the early morning stillness. I had just slipped into my robe when Sabrina pushed open my bedroom door without knocking. Her perfume arrived before her voice. "Just a few extra things. Evelina," she said, scrolling on her phone. "The baseboards in the living room are dusty. The master closet needs organizing. And those guest room curtains, please wash and press them before we're back." Her eyes flicked over my dresser. The quilt folded at the end of my bed. The stack of library books on the nightstand. She didn't hide the faint wrinkle of her nose. "Try to make yourself useful. It's the least you can do." I didn't answer. She didn't wait for one. Stepping back into the hallway in her pressed linen pants and spotless sneakers, calling for the kids to hurry. By the time I made it to the front window, Colton was loading the last bags into the SUV. Even the nanny was climbing in. Amelie clutching her hand. Jonah swinging his little suitcase like this was the grandest adventure. The engine started. Sabrina was still pointing at the luggage rack, directing Colton where to strap the beach gear. Then they were gone, the car disappearing down the street, leaving nothing but the faint smell of exhaust and her perfume hanging in the air. The silence that followed was heavy. I walked slowly through each room, my bare feet cold against the hardwood. The living room gleamed with Sabrina's modern furniture glass, chrome, and pale upholstery that no one dared sit on. My floral curtains had been replaced by stiff, white panels, the kind you see in hotel lobbies. In the dining room, the table where Colton once did homework now held a sculptural centerpiece I'd never touched. The kitchen countertops were bare except for a designer coffee machine that required special pods. I stood in the doorway, looking at it all, and for the first time in years, I let myself imagine this house without them, without the cold surfaces, without the tight smiles, without the constant sense of being in someone else's way. That was when I decided to make coffee and sit at my kitchen table, the one still mine, and let the silence speak. By mid-afternoon, I had worked my way through most of the upstairs, moving slowly, not from fatigue, but from a strange reluctance to touch anything that wasn't mine. In the master bedroom, the air smelled faintly of Sabrina's perfume and some kind of lavender spray. I started with the dresser, then moved to her nightstand, dusting around the picture frames and the little tray she used for jewelry. When I opened the top drawer to reach the back corner, I saw an envelope with the flap already torn. The bank's logo sat in the corner, bold and unmistakable. I almost set it aside, thinking it was a bill meant for Colton. But something about the thick paper made me look closer. It was a mortgage statement for this house. I read it twice before the numbers stopped swimming. Payment received, balance remaining, interest applied. My throat went dry. This house had been paid off for more than 30 years. Henry's life insurance had cleared it completely in 1985. I'd never taken out another loan against it. Yet here was proof that Colton had been sending thousands of dollars every month, somewhere. The payment address wasn't the bank's main branch. It was a private account number. My mind filled in the rest before I wanted it to. Sabrina had convinced him there was still a mortgage, collecting his payments for herself. I sat down on the edge of their bed, the statement trembling in my hand. Betrayal has a way of waking you up fast. All the little humiliations, the side comments, the way my home had been turned into her showroom, it all narrowed into this one fact: she'd been stealing from her own husband while treating me like an inconvenience. I put the statement back exactly where I'd found it, then went straight to my bedroom, In the back of my closet was an old metal filing cabinet. Paint chipped. Drawer handles loose. I unlocked it and pulled out the plastic sleeve that held the deed. My name was still there in black ink, Evelina Marchand. Sole owner. I held it for a long moment, feeling the weight of it in my hands. This wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a reminder that the ground they walked on, the walls they decorated, the doors they locked at night, none of it was theirs. And for the first time in years, I began to think about what I could do with that truth. I didn't wait long before picking up the phone. Harold Benton had been our family lawyer since Henri and I bought this house. He'd handled the will, the insurance, and even helped Colton with the paperwork when he started his business. His voice, warm and steady, hadn't changed in all those years. "Evelina," he said, "what a nice surprise." "What can I do for you?" I told him about the mortgage statement, the deed in my name, and the years of payments that should never have been made. I kept my tone measured, but my fingers gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. He listened without interrupting, then cleared his throat. "Evelina, the deed is still yours. You never transferred ownership, and you've never taken out another mortgage. That means you have full rights to the property every square foot, every stick of furniture you didn't explicitly gift. You can change the locks, sell items, even restrict access if you choose." The knot in my chest loosened just enough for me to take a deep breath. "So, legally, there's nothing they can do if I make changes while they're gone." "Nothing at all," he said. "Just be sure you're ready for whatever reaction comes after." "Oh, I'm ready," I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. After we hung up, I called Branson's consignment. Martha Branson, who ran the shop, was more than willing to send a truck first thing in the morning. High-end furniture moves fast. She told me, "If you want it gone, my boys will handle it carefully." I walked through the house with my phone, sending her photos Sabrina's glass dining table that no one ever used, the stiff white sofas that looked better than they felt, the chrome shelving that belonged in an office, not a home. Each picture I sent felt like peeling a layer of her presence out of these walls. That afternoon, I drove into town and found myself drawn to pieces that spoke of comfort rather than show. A deep blue sectional you could sink into. A farmhouse table with nicks and scratches that told its own stories. Quilted throw pillows in colors that reminded me of summer gardens. I bought them without hesitation. Arranging for delivery the same day, the consignment truck would arrive to take the others away. When I got home, I went to my bedroom and opened the box where I'd stored the family photos Sabrina had removed from the hall. One by one, I set them back in their rightful places: the wedding portrait of Henri and me, Colton's high school graduation, the kids' first Christmas together. By the time I finished, the house already felt different, as if it had taken its first real breath in years. By late Sunday morning, the street outside was quiet enough that I heard the low rumble of their SUV before it turned into the driveway. Through the front window, I saw them tanned, relaxed, sunglasses pushed up onto their heads like they were still on the beach. Colton climbed out first, stretching his shoulders, while Sabrina adjusted her hair in the side mirror. The kids tumbled out with the nanny close behind, dragging suitcases across the gravel. The first rattle of the front door came seconds later. A pause. Then another try. Harder this time. "That's weird." Colton's voice called through the door. "My key's not working." "Try the other one," Sabrina snapped. More jiggling. A scrape of metal against the lock, then a louder clatter as keys were swapped and tested in quick succession. "It's like the lock's been changed," Colton said. "That's impossible," Sabrina replied sharply. Who would her words cut off when footsteps circled to the side porch? The handle on the kitchen door turned, then stopped with the same dull click. I took my time walking over, opening the kitchen door just enough so they could see my face. "Hello," I said evenly. "How was your trip?" Sabrina's mouth tightened. "We can't get in. Something's wrong with the locks." "They're not wrong," I said. "They're new." Colton frowned. "Why would you?" Before he could finish, Amelie stepped forward, shifting from foot to foot. "Grandma, can I please use the bathroom?" I opened the door wider and smiled at her. "Of course." "Sweetheart, you know where it is." She slipped past me without hesitation. Jonah started to follow, but I put a gentle hand on the frame and didn't move aside. "The rest of you can wait," I said. My voice stayed calm, but my heart thudded steadily in my chest. This is my house. I decide who comes in. Colton stared at me like he wasn't sure he'd heard right. Sabrina's cheeks flushed a blotchy red. Behind them, the nanny shifted awkwardly, her eyes flicking between us. I stepped back just far enough to close the door softly but firmly, leaving them on the porch with the sound of running water upstairs and the smell of coffee drifting from my kitchen. I didn't make them wait long. A few minutes later, I opened the door again and stepped onto the porch. Colton's face was lined with confusion, while Sabrina's expression had hardened into something sharp. "There's something you should know," I said, looking directly at my son. "This house was paid off decades ago. There's no mortgage. Hasn't been one since your father died." He blinked at me. "What are you talking about? I've been making payments every month for years." I nodded slowly. "To an account your wife controls." I found the statement in her nightstand. The shift in his expression was instant shock, then dawning realization, then a flush of anger. He turned toward Sabrina. "Is that true?" She laughed, short and brittle. "Oh, please." "She's twisting things. I was saving that money for us, for emergencies. She doesn't understand how finances work." "I understand theft," I said quietly. Sabrina's eyes narrowed. "You're too old to be living here alone. You should be in a retirement home, not hoarding space you don't need. We have a family. This is my family's house," I cut in. "And my name is on the deed." Colton's jaw tightened. "Answer me. Sabrina, did you lie about the mortgage?" She glanced between us, her voice rising. "You don't get it. I was protecting our future. She doesn't need this place. She barely uses half the rooms." "I was. You were stealing from me," he said. Each word clipped. Her composure cracked then, the Polish slipping away to reveal raw panic. "You're letting her turn you against me," she shouted. "No," Colton said, his voice low and final. "You did that yourself." Her face drained of color. For a second, I thought she might argue again, but instead her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the porch like the strings had been cut. Colton crouched beside her, calling her name, but her eyes were shut tight. I stepped back into the kitchen, leaving the door open just enough for the sound of my phone dialing to carry out to him. The house was mine in every way for the next 3 days. No footsteps in the hall, no clipped remarks from the kitchen doorway, no undercurrent of tension in the air. I cooked meals I wanted to eat, lingering over them without rushing to serve anyone else. I read on the porch until the sun dropped low and the shadows stretched across the yard. At night, I slept deeply, without the faint hum of anxiety that had been my companion for years. On the third evening, just as the sky turned the color of faded denim, I heard a car in the driveway. The knock at the front door was hesitant. When I opened it, Colton stood there alone, His shirt was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, and the shadows under his eyes told me he hadn't been sleeping. "Mom," he said quietly, "can I come in?" We sat at the kitchen table. He didn't touch the coffee I poured for him, just stared at the steam curling upward. "I'm sorry," he began, "for letting her talk to you that way, for believing her when she made me think you were the problem." His voice was low, but each word carried the weight of years. He told me about the fights whenever he defended me, how she made him feel guilty for loving his mother. He admitted he never questioned the mortgage because it was easier to trust her than to confront the possibility she was lying. "I'm filing for divorce," he said. "I'm going to fight for custody of the kids, and I'll pay back every dollar she took. I want to make this right." I nodded. "I forgive you, Colton. But things can't go back to how they were. We need boundaries." His shoulders eased a little, but I kept my eyes on him, waiting to see if his actions would match his words. 6 months can change the shape of a life. By early April, the divorce papers were signed, and Sabrina was back with her parents in North Carolina. The calls stopped. The emails stopped. Even her perfume, which had clung to the curtains for weeks, was gone. Weekends now belonged to Amelie and Jonah. On Saturday mornings, Amelie stood on a stool beside me at the kitchen counter, measuring flour with careful hands while I told her the trick to keeping pie crust tender. Jonah preferred the garden, kneeling in the dirt beside me to press marigold seeds into the soil. His laughter carried across the yard whenever a robin landed close enough to startle. Colton came by most Friday evenings, staying in the guest room when the kids were here. He followed the house rules without complaint, helped with cleanup after dinner, kept his phone off the table, and respected the spaces that were mine alone. There were still shadows in his expression sometimes, remnants of the years that had worn him down, but I could see him standing straighter, speaking lighter. The house felt different now, not just because of the furniture or the photos back on the walls, but because the air was warm with the kind of noise I wanted to keep. Laughter in the kitchen, the sound of a soccer ball thumping against the backyard fence. Conversations that didn't feel like negotiations. One Sunday afternoon, after the kids had gone with Colton to the park, I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of tea, looking out at the garden where green shoots pushed up through the soil. For the first time in years, the season felt like a reflection of my own life, something growing again, where I'd once thought nothing could. This year, Mother's Day began in my kitchen, not with tension, but with the smell of cinnamon rolls in the oven and Amelie arranging tulips from my garden in a mason jar. Jonah sat at the table, coloring a card he insisted was from all of us. Colton carried in a platter of fresh fruit, smiling in that unguarded way I hadn't seen in years. The table was mine, my sturdy farmhouse wood, my quilted runner, my china with its hairline cracks from decades of use. The walls held our history again. Henri's easy grin from our wedding day, Colton in his Little League cap, the grandkids' school portraits lined up in mismatched frames. We ate slowly, laughing between bites, the kind of laughter that doesn't need to prove anything. At one point, I glanced at the vase of tulips, remembering another table, another day when a cream-colored card had been slid toward me like a dismissal. "Thank you for your service." It had read, "Now." I understood the service that mattered most, serving my own dignity, my peace, my joy. I cleared the plates, feeling the weight of that old insult finally gone, replaced by something I'd claimed for myself, the certainty that I would never, ever accept less again.